Without having anyone to leave her sick twin daughters with, a poor woman takes them to the farm where she works. During the party on the property, the girls interrupt everything and call the farm owner Daddy, leaving everyone stunned. The sun had barely peeked over the horizon when Emma Thompson jolted awake. Her brown eyes, still heavy with sleep, focused on the clock on her nightstand, 5:30 a.m. A sigh escaped her lips as she stood up, her muscles protesting the sudden movement. Today would be the most important and potentially disastrous day of her career as a cook at Miller Farm. While dressing hurriedly, Emma mentally repeated the long list of tasks awaiting her. Ethan Miller's engagement celebration, the son of the farm's owners, was no ordinary event. It was the golden opportunity to prove her worth, to show that she deserved more than to be just another employee on this vast property. A noise coming from the next room interrupted her thoughts. Emma froze, her heart racing as she strained her ears. The sound came again, a low, almost inaudible moan. "No, please, not today," she muttered, rushing to her daughter's room. The sight that greeted her made her stomach drop. Sophia and Olivia, her 4-year-old twins, were awake in their small beds, their cheeks flushed and their eyes shining with fever. "Mommy, I don't feel good," whimpered Sophia, the older by 2 minutes, reaching out her little arms imploringly. Emma ran over to hug her daughters, feeling the heat radiating from their small bodies. Her mind whirled. How could she handle this today, of all days? "Shh, it's all right, my darlings," she whispered, trying to stay calm for their sake. "Mommy will take care of you." But how? The question echoed in her mind as she took the girls' temperatures, 101.3 degrees, too high to leave them alone, yet not high enough to justify a hospital visit. Emma picked up her phone, dialing the nanny's number with trembling fingers. "Pick up, please, pick up," she murmured, pacing back and forth in the small room. After 4 interminable rings, Mrs. Peterson's sleepy voice filled the line. "Hello? Mrs. Peterson, thank God. It's Emma. The girls are sick, and I need—" "Oh, Emma, dear." The elderly lady's voice sounded genuinely regretful. "I'm so sorry, but I woke up with a terrible flu. I can't even get out of bed, let alone care for the little ones." Emma's world seemed to collapse. But it's the engagement day. I can't miss it. I know, dear. I really am sorry. Maybe you could call someone at the farm." Emma almost laughed at the suggestion. Who on the farm could help her? No one there knew about the twins. It was her most closely guarded secret. Her secret that could cost her job if discovered. "Sure, I'll figure something out. Thanks, Mrs. Peterson. Get well soon," she said mechanically, ending the call. For a moment, Emma stood in the middle of the room, panic threatening to consume her. The clock on the wall seemed to mock her, its hands moving inexorably toward disaster. "Mommy?" Olivia's voice, normally so lively, sounded weak and scared. "I'm thirsty." That small voice was like a jolt, bringing her back to reality. Emma took a deep breath, forcing herself to think. She was a survivor. She always had been. She had raised 2 daughters on her own for 4 years, hiding them from the world. A day of fever wasn't going to beat her. "Okay, here's what we're going to do," she said, more to herself than to the girls. "You 2 are going to take a warm bath to lower your fever, then we'll have breakfast and take your medicine. And then—" She hesitated, the idea forming in her mind. It was risky, absurdly risky. But what choice did she have? "And then you're coming with Mommy to the farm." The twins' eyes widened at the news. They had never set foot on Miller Farm, the almost mythical place where their mother worked. "But you have to promise me you'll stay very quiet and hidden, all right? It's a secret game," Emma forced a smile, hating herself for lying to her daughters, but knowing it was necessary. The girls nodded solemnly, the prospect of a secret adventure momentarily outweighing the discomfort of their fever. The rest of the morning passed in a frantic blur. Emma bathed the girls, fed them, gave them medicine, and packed a small bag with clothes, quiet toys, and more medicine, all while getting herself ready and trying not to succumb to complete panic. At 7:30, Emma locked the door of her small house at the back of the property, the drowsy twins in her arms. The path to the main house had never felt so long. Each step was torture, her eyes constantly scanning for any early-rising employee. The kitchen, normally her refuge, felt strangely threatening that morning. Emma slipped in through the back door, grateful to always be the first to arrive. Heart in her throat, she headed to the small storage room adjacent to the kitchen. "Remember, girls, absolute silence," she whispered, setting them down. "It's our special secret." With trembling hands, Emma improvised a bed out of potato sacks and clean sheets she found in a cupboard. It was far from ideal, but it would have to do. "Mommy will check on you whenever she can," she promised, covering them with a light blanket. "Try to sleep, okay? I love you." With one last anguished look at her daughters, Emma closed the storage room door and returned to the kitchen. She barely had time to catch her breath before the door opened again, letting in her team. "Good morning, Emma," greeted Javier, her sous chef, with an energetic smile. "Ready for the big day?" Emma forced a smile, hoping her shaking hands weren't noticeable. "More than ready. Let's get started." The following hours were a whirlwind of frantic activity. Emma moved around the kitchen like a dancer in a complex choreography, jumping from one task to another without pause. Her movements were precise, efficient, but her mind was divided. Every few minutes, her eyes flicked to the storage room door. Were the girls okay? Was the fever down? Did they need water? The constant fear that someone might hear a cry or a cough kept her on permanent high alert. "Emma, are the canapes ready?" came the sharp voice of Megan, Ethan's fiancée, cutting through the kitchen like a knife. Emma turned, meeting the cold blue eyes of the young woman. Megan was the epitome of a bridezilla, demanding and perfectionist to the last hairpin. "Almost done, Miss Megan," Emma replied calmly. "They'll be perfect on time, I promise." Megan wrinkled her nose, her gaze sweeping the kitchen distrustfully. "I hope so. This day has to be absolutely perfect, understand? One small mistake and—" "Megan, dear, I'm sure Emma has everything under control," came the gentle voice of Susan Miller, interrupting what promised to be a threatening speech. Emma cast a grateful look at the Miller family matriarch. Susan had always been kind to her, treating her more like a person than just an employee. Megan huffed, throwing a final warning look before leaving the kitchen in a swirl of silk and expensive perfume. "Don't let her intimidate you, Emma," Susan said with a reassuring smile. "You're the best cook we've ever had. I'm sure everything will be wonderful." Emma nodded, grateful but unable to fully return the smile. The compliment, which normally would have filled her with pride, only increased her guilt now. If Susan knew what she was hiding just a few feet away— "Thank you, Mrs. Miller," she managed. "I'll do my best." Susan nodded, satisfied, but her gaze lingered on Emma a moment longer. There was something different about the young cook today. A tension in her shoulders, an unease in her eyes that was not usual. "Is everything all right, Emma?" she asked, concern evident in her voice. "You seem a bit distracted." Emma's heart sped up. Was it that obvious? I'm just a little nervous about the event, Mrs. Miller. It's such an important occasion." Susan smiled sympathetically. "I understand, but don't worry. I have complete confidence in you." With one last encouraging smile, Susan left the kitchen. Emma exhaled a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. That was close. The hours dragged on, each minute feeling like an eternity. Emma spun around the kitchen like a whirlwind, giving orders, checking dishes, adjusting seasonings. Her usual efficiency was heightened by the adrenaline of secrecy and fear. About every half hour or so, she found an excuse to go to the storage room. Once, to get more flour. Another time, to check the wine stock. Each visit was a torture of anxiety and a brief moment of relief. The twins, thank God, seemed to understand the gravity of the situation. They stayed quiet in their makeshift nest, sleeping most of the time. The fever seemed to be subsiding, but Emma knew she couldn't let her guard down. "Just a bit longer," she whispered to herself each visit. "Just a few more hours." But as the hours passed, the pressure only increased. The first guests began to arrive, their murmurs of admiration echoing through the house. Emma could hear the clink of glasses, the sound of polite laughter. The cocktail hour had begun. "Emma, the servers are ready for the first round of canapes," Javier announced, his forehead glistening with sweat. Emma nodded, adding the final touches to the trays. Her gaze flicked once more to the storage room door. It had been almost an hour since she last checked. Were the girls all right? Go, she told Javier. I just need to check something in the stockroom. I'll catch up with you. Javier frowned, confused. Are you sure? The guests. It'll only take a minute, Emma interrupted, already moving toward the storage room. I promise. As soon as the door closed behind her, Emma rushed to the corner where her daughters were hidden. Sophia and Olivia were awake, their eyes shining in the dim light. Mommy, Olivia whispered, reaching out her arms. Emma hugged them tight, feeling the heat of their little bodies. The fever seemed to have dropped a bit, but they were still far from normal. How are you feeling, my loves? She asked quietly, stroking their hair. Tired, Sophia replied. And hungry. Emma's heart clenched. They hadn't eaten anything since their rushed breakfast. How could she have been so careless? Mommy will bring you something to eat, okay? But you have to keep being my brave, quiet girls. The twins nodded solemnly, their large eyes filled with trust. Emma felt a wave of love and guilt so strong it nearly knocked her over. I love you, she whispered, kissing their foreheads. I'll be back soon. Leaving the storage room, Emma almost collided with Susan Miller. Oh, Emma, there you are, said Susan, her expression a mix of relief and curiosity. I was looking for you. The guests are asking for your famous goat cheese canapés. Emma felt the blood freeze in her veins. How long had Susan been there? Had she heard anything? I was just checking the stock, she stammered, trying to keep her composure. I'm going to serve the canapés right now. Susan tilted her head, her eyes studying Emma's face. Are you all right? You seem a bit agitated. Emma forced a smile, praying her face wouldn't betray the panic she felt. I'm fine, Mrs. Miller, just a little nervous about the event, as I mentioned before. Susan nodded slowly, but Emma could see she wasn't entirely convinced. Well, if you need anything at all, just let me know, all right? Of course. Thank you, Emma managed, already heading toward the kitchen. I'll get those canapés ready right away. The next few hours were a blur of frantic activity. Emma moved like a well-oiled machine, preparing dishes, giving orders, ensuring everything was perfect. But inside, she was a whirlwind of emotions. Every few minutes, her gaze drifted to the storage room door. The fear that someone might hear crying or discover the girls consumed her. She could barely focus on the tasks at hand, her heart pounding at every unexpected sound. As the evening wore on, Emma found herself increasingly torn between her responsibilities in the kitchen and her worry for her daughters. She managed, in a brief moment when the staff was distracted, to slip some food and water to the girls, but she knew it wasn't enough. They needed proper care, a comfortable bed, their mother. The night was building toward its climax, the formal dinner where Ethan and Megan would officially announce their engagement. Emma was overseeing the final details of the main courses when she heard something that made her blood run cold. A muffled cry, almost inaudible to anyone but an attentive mother, coming from the storage room. Emma froze, her eyes locked on the closed door. For one terrible moment, she imagined everyone in the kitchen could hear it, that any second someone would question, investigate. Emma! Emma! Javier's voice brought her back to reality. The sauce is about to burn. Blinking quickly, Emma turned her attention back to the stove, saving the sauce just in time. But her mind was in chaos. Her daughters needed her. The fever must have worsened, or they were scared or hungry. Javier, she said, trying to keep her voice steady, I need to check something in the storage. Can you keep an eye on things here for a minute? Without waiting for an answer, Emma headed to the storage room, her heart pounding. The moment the door closed behind her, she rushed to the corner where her daughters were hidden. Sophia and Olivia were awake, their cheeks flushed and eyes burning with fever. Olivia was sobbing softly, while Sophia tried to comfort her. Shh, it's all right. Mommy's here, Emma whispered, hugging them both. She could feel the heat radiating from their little bodies. The fever had returned with a vengeance. Mommy, I want to go home, whined Sophia, her voice weak and trembling. Emma felt her heart break. What was she doing? How could she have put her job above her daughter's well-being? In that moment, looking into the feverish, frightened faces of her twins, Emma made a decision. No matter what happened, she couldn't go on with this charade. Her daughters needed her, and that was more important than any job or secret. "All right, my loves," she said, her voice firm despite the tears threatening to fall. "We're going home right now." As Emma prepared to pick the girls up and leave, she heard the storage room door open. Her heart stopped. Standing in the doorway was Susan Miller, her eyes wide with shock at the scene before her. For a long moment, no one moved. The silence was broken only by Olivia's soft sobs. Finally, Emma found her voice. "Mrs. Miller, I can explain." Susan raised a hand, silencing her. Her eyes shifted from Emma to the twins, an unreadable expression on her face. "I think," she said slowly, "that we have a lot to discuss, Emma." And with those words, Emma knew her carefully guarded secret had finally come to light. What this would mean for her daughters, or her future at Miller Farm, she didn't know. But one thing was certain: nothing would ever be the same. The Miller Farm's grand ballroom sparkled under the gentle light of crystal chandeliers. The hum of elegant conversation and the clinking of champagne glasses filled the air, creating an atmosphere of refined celebration. At the center of it all, Ethan Miller and his fiancée, Megan, shone like the perfect couple, receiving congratulations and smiles from the 200 guests gathered to celebrate their engagement. Emma Thompson watched the scene from afar, her heart torn between consuming anxiety and the professional duty that kept her moving. From the kitchen, she oversaw the endless flow of canapes and drinks, her eyes constantly drifting to the storage room door where her daughters were hidden. "Emma, we need more champagne in the main hall." The voice of Javier, her sous chef, snapped her back to reality. "Sure, I'll take care of it right away," she replied automatically, forcing herself to focus on the task at hand. As Emma moved about the kitchen, preparing the next round of drinks, she couldn't help the pang of guilt. Her daughters were sick, hidden like a shameful secret, while she served the wealthy and powerful. But what else could she do? This job was all she had, the only way to support her girls. In the main hall, Ethan Miller raised his glass, the champagne's sparkle reflecting in his blue eyes. The murmuring conversation died down as the guests turned to hear the groom-to-be's toast. "Friends and family," Ethan began, his voice strong and confident, echoing through the hall. "Megan and I would like to thank all of you for being here tonight to celebrate with us." While Ethan spoke, no one noticed the small storage room door slowly opening. Two tiny figures, hair disheveled and wearing simple dresses, crept out silently. Sophia and Olivia, their faces still flushed with fever and eyes gleaming with delirium, looked around in wonder at the bright lights and finely dressed people. "Look, Liv," Sophia whispered to her sister. "It's a princess party." Olivia nodded, her wide eyes full of amazement. "Where's Mommy?" The twins took a few hesitant steps into the hall, their little hands clasped together. The world around them seemed to spin, the chandelier lights creating sparkling halos dancing before their feverish eyes. "And it is with great joy that we officially announce our engagement," Ethan's voice continued, unaware of the drama about to unfold. It was then that Sophia saw something that made her little heart race. There, in the center of the hall, stood a tall, handsome man who looked exactly like the photos her mother guarded so carefully. The photos of the man, she said, was their father. "Liv, look," Sophia exclaimed, her voice louder than she intended. "It's Daddy." A few heads turned, frowning at the unexpected noise, but the girls didn't notice. With surprising strength for children so small and sick, they began to push through the crowd of guests. "Daddy!" Olivia yelled, her high-pitched voice cutting through Ethan's speech. "Daddy, we're here!" Silence fell over the hall like a heavy curtain. Ethan stopped mid-sentence, his eyes wide with confusion as he searched for the source of those childish voices. And then, as if an invisible barrier had been broken, Sophia and Olivia emerged from the crowd, their little faces flushed with fever, their hair tangled, and their simple dresses starkly contrasting with the elegance around them. Without hesitation, They ran straight to Ethan, clinging to his legs with all the strength their small arms could muster. "Daddy, Daddy!" they cried in unison, looking up at him with eyes full of love and expectation. The shock on Ethan's face was palpable. He looked from the girls clinging to his legs to the crowd of guests, as if seeking an explanation for what was happening. It was the sound of shattering glass that finally broke the stunned silence. Megan, standing beside Ethan, had dropped her champagne flute. Her eyes, wide with shock and fury, darted from the girls to Ethan and back again. "Ethan," she hissed, her voice trembling with rage, "what is the meaning of this?" Before Ethan could respond, if he even had a response, an anguished cry pierced the air. "Sophia! Olivia!" Emma burst in from the kitchen, her face pale with terror. She rushed through the hall, ignoring the shocked stares and the growing murmurs among the guests. "Oh my God, I'm so sorry, she babbled as she approached, trying to pull the girls away from Ethan's legs. "They're sick. They have a fever. They don't know what they're doing." But Sophia and Olivia clung tight, refusing to let go. "No, Mommy," Sophia protested. "We found Daddy." The silence that followed was deafening. 200 pairs of eyes fixed on Emma, who froze in place, her face a mask of pure terror. Ethan, who until that moment seemed paralyzed by shock, finally found his voice. "Emma," he said, his voice rough and confused. What is going on here?" Before Emma could reply, Susan Miller's authoritative voice cut through the air. "All of you, to the office." Now, she turned to the astonished guests. "Ladies and gentlemen, I apologize for this unexpected occurrence. Please, continue enjoying the party. Servers, more champagne, please." With the polished efficiency born of years managing social crises, Susan began shepherding Ethan, Megan, Emma, and the twins out of the hall. The chatter among the guests exploded as soon as they left, everyone eager to speculate on the drama they had just witnessed. The walk to the family office on the second floor was made in tense silence. Emma carried Sophia and Olivia, who now looked exhausted, the adrenaline rush replaced by feverish lethargy. Ethan walked like a man in a trance, while Megan practically radiated fury beside him. As soon as the office door closed behind them, it was as if a dam had burst. "What the hell was that?" Megan exploded, her voice shrill with anger. "Ethan, do you have any explanation for this?" Ethan shook his head, still looking stunned. I have no idea." "Emma." He turned to the cook, his eyes pleading for an explanation. Emma, trembling from head to toe, clutched the twins tighter. I can explain," she began, her voice barely above a whisper. "Well, it better be a very good explanation," Megan interrupted, her eyes flashing. "Because from where I stand, it looks like you staged this whole thing to ruin our engagement." "Megan, please," Susan intervened, her tone firm but gentle. "Let's give Emma a chance to speak." She turned to Emma, her eyes full of a mixture of emotions: shock, confusion, and maybe a flicker of hope. "Emma, dear, please, tell us what's happening." Emma took a deep breath, feeling the weight of 5 years of secrets ready to spill out. She looked at her daughters, now dozing in her arms, then at the expectant faces around her. There was no going back. These are my daughters," she began, her voice trembling. "Sophia and Olivia. They're 4 years old." "We can see that," Megan sneered. "The question is, why are they calling Ethan Daddy?" Emma closed her eyes for a moment, summoning courage. When she opened them, there was a fierce determination in her gaze. "Because they're Ryan's daughters," she said, her voice steadier now. "Your brother, Ethan. Your son, Mrs. Miller." The silence that followed was deafening. Ethan staggered as if punched, collapsing heavily into a nearby armchair. Megan's jaw dropped, her earlier fury replaced by mute shock. And Susan brought a hand to her heart, tears welling in her eyes as she looked at the granddaughters she never knew she had. How is that possible?" Ethan finally managed, his voice raw with emotion. "Ryan never mentioned..." Emma shook her head sadly. "He didn't know. He never got the chance to find out." And then, like a dam finally giving way, Emma began to tell her story. She spoke of how she and Ryan had fallen in love, of secret meetings in the stables, whispered dreams under the stars. She spoke of the fear when they discovered the pregnancy, of hasty plans to run away. "We were going to tell you," Emma said, tears rolling down her face. "After we got settled somewhere else, Ryan, he didn't want to disappoint you, but he didn't want to give us up either." Susan sobbed quietly, stepping forward to gently touch one of the sleeping girl's cheeks. "Oh, Ryan," she murmured, "my brave, foolish boy." Emma continued her story, her voice quivering as she recounted the accident that took Ryan from them before he ever knew he would be the father of twin girls. She spoke of the fear and loneliness of the months that followed, of the birth of the girls, and of her desperate decision to keep everything a secret. "I was so afraid," she admitted, looking pleadingly at Susan and Ethan, "afraid I'd lose my job, afraid no one would believe me. And then, it just got harder and harder to tell the truth." The silence that followed was heavy, laden with unspoken emotions and shocking revelations. Ethan seemed lost in thought, his gaze distant as he tried to process everything. Megan stood unusually silent, her face unreadable. Susan was the one who finally broke the silence. Slowly, she approached Emma and the girls. Gently, she touched Sophia's cheek, then Olivia's. "They look so much like him," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. "How did I not see it before? The eyes, the smile." Emma choked back a sob. "Mrs. Miller, I'm so sorry. I never wanted to hurt anyone. I just wanted to protect them." Susan raised her eyes to Emma, and to everyone's surprise, including her own, she smiled. It was a sad smile, filled with pain and loss, but also with unexpected joy. "Oh, my dear," she said softly, "you've given us something precious. A part of Ryan we thought we'd lost forever." Ethan finally seemed to snap out of his stupor. He stood up, slowly approaching Emma and the girls. His eyes, so much like Ryan's, were full of tears he hadn't let fall. I'm an uncle," he murmured, as if testing the words. Then, to everyone's surprise, he laughed, a brief, almost hysterical laugh. "My God, I'm an uncle." Megan, who had remained strangely quiet, suddenly moved. "This is crazy," she said, her voice trembling. "How do we know she's telling the truth? How do we know these children really belong to Ryan?" Before anyone could answer, Sophia stirred in Emma's arms, her sleepy eyes opening slowly. She looked around, confused, until her gaze landed on Ethan. "Uncle," she murmured drowsily, "you look like Daddy in the photos." It was as if those simple words broke a spell. Ethan let out a sob, falling to his knees in front of Emma and the girls. With trembling hands, he touched Sophia's cheek. "Hi, Princess," he said, his voice thick with emotion. I'm your Uncle Ethan." Olivia, woken by the commotion, also opened her eyes. "We have an uncle?" she asked, her voice weak from the fever. Emma, openly weeping now, nodded. "Yes, my loves, this is Daddy's brother." Susan approached, kneeling beside Ethan. "And I'm your grandmother," she said softly, tears streaming down her face. The girls looked around in wonder at the faces surrounding them, their feverish eyes shining. For a moment, time seemed to stand still. Here they were, a newly discovered family, united by Ryan's loss and love. Megan was the one who broke the moment. "This is too much," she said, her voice trembling. I need air." And with that, she ran from the office, the door slamming behind her. Ethan made a move to follow her, but Susan stopped him with a gentle touch on his arm. "Let her go, dear," Susan said softly. "She needs time to process all of this. We all do." Ethan nodded, running a hand over his tired face. His eyes returned to the twins, who were now watching him with sleepy curiosity. "They're burning up with fever," he noted, concern in his voice. Emma nodded, guilt written all over her face. "They woke up sick this morning. I had no one to look after them, and I couldn't miss work today. I hid them in the storage room." Her voice cracked, tears welling once more. "I'm a terrible mother. I put my job above my daughter's health." "No, dear," Susan interjected, placing a comforting hand on Emma's shoulder. "You did what you thought you had to do to protect them and provide for them. Don't blame yourself for that." Ethan stood up abruptly. "I'm going to call Dr. Harrison. He must be among the guests downstairs." As Ethan left to find the doctor, Susan gently took Olivia from Emma's arms. The girl, exhausted and feverish, snuggled against her newly discovered grandmother. "Let's take them to a more comfortable room," Susan suggested. "They need proper rest." Emma nodded, grateful for the unexpected kindness. Following Susan, she carried Sophia out of the office and down the hall to a luxurious guest room. As they settled the girls in the large bed, Emma couldn't help but notice the contrast between this elegant room and the small home where she had raised the twins for the past 4 years. It was a painful reminder of everything her daughters had missed and of what they could have had. Dr. Harrison arrived moments later, followed by a visibly anxious Ethan. The doctor, maintaining admirable professionalism in the face of such an unusual situation, examined the twins carefully. "It's a bad flu," he finally diagnosed. "Nothing that rest, hydration, and the proper medication won't take care of. I'll leave a prescription and detailed instructions." While the doctor spoke with Susan about the care needed, Ethan approached Emma, who sat on the edge of the bed holding Sophia's hand. "Emma," he began, his voice low and hesitant. I'm sorry for everything you've had to go through alone. Ryan would have been..." His voice faltered, emotion overtaking him. Emma looked up at him, seeing not the boss's son but the brother of the man she had loved. "He would have been a wonderful father," she finished softly. Ethan nodded, unshed tears in his eyes. "Yes, he would have." He paused, seeming to struggle with his next words. "Emma, I know it's early and there's a lot to figure out, but I want you to know these girls are family. Our family, and we'll take care of all 3 of you, no matter what." Emma felt as though a huge weight had been lifted from her shoulders. For the first time in 5 years, she allowed herself to believe that maybe, just maybe, everything would be okay. Susan joined them, sitting on the other side of the bed. For a moment, the 3 adults sat in silence, watching the sleeping twins. "They're beautiful," Susan finally said, her voice filled with admiration and love. "They look so much like Ryan when he was little." Emma smiled through her tears. "They have his smile. And his laugh. Sometimes, when they laugh, it's like he's here again." The silence that followed was comfortable, full of shared memories and unspoken promises of a future together. It was Ethan who finally broke the moment. "Mom, Emma, what do we do now?" "There's an engagement party happening downstairs. 200 guests wondering what just happened. And my fiancé." He paused, the reality of his situation with Megan finally hitting him. Susan sighed, the practical matriarch stepping up. "First, we take care of these girls," she said firmly. "Emma, you'll stay here with them. Ethan, you and I will go back to the party. We'll give a simplified announcement. We'll say there was an unexpected family emergency and ask for everyone's understanding. The details can wait." Ethan nodded, grateful for his mother's guidance. He stood, casting one last protective glance at his nieces. "And what about Megan?" he asked, his voice betraying his concern. Susan pressed her lips together. "I'll talk to her. She'll need time, Ethan. This is a lot to process." As Ethan and Susan prepared to return to the party, Emma remained by her daughter's side, her mind spinning with everything that had happened. In a matter of hours, her entire world had been turned upside down. The secret she had carried for so long had been revealed in the most dramatic way possible. But as she watched Susan gently kiss her granddaughters' foreheads, and Ethan cast one last protective look at his nieces, Emma felt something she hadn't felt in a long time. Hope. The road ahead would be difficult, she knew. There would be questions to answer, explanations to give, relationships to rebuild. But for the first time in 5 years, Emma was no longer alone. Her daughters had a family, the family Ryan had always wanted them to have. After Ethan and Susan left, Emma lay down beside the twins, pulling them close. Sophia murmured something in her sleep, snuggling closer to her mother. "It's all right now, my loves," Emma whispered, kissing their feverish foreheads. "Mommy's here. And now we have a family." Outside at the party continued, guests buzzing with speculation about the unexpected drama they had witnessed. But here, in this quiet room, a new family was beginning to form, united by the love of a man who had left too soon, but whose legacy lived on through his daughters. The future was uncertain, full of challenges and difficult conversations. But at that moment, with her daughters safe in her arms and the promise of a new beginning, Emma finally allowed herself to relax. The secret was out, the burden lifted. And tomorrow, well, tomorrow would be the first day of the rest of their lives. The first rays of morning light filtered through the lace curtains of the guest house, finding Emma already awake, sitting on the edge of the bed where Sophia and Olivia still slept soundly. Her eyes, shadowed by dark circles, reflected the sleepless nights and anxiety that had consumed her since that dramatic engagement party reveal. 3 days had passed since that fateful night, and Miller Farm seemed to be shrouded in a thick fog of tension and uncertainty. The silence that now hovered over the property was almost deafening, a stark contrast to the festive buzz of just a few days earlier. Emma ran a hand through her messy hair, her gaze wandering around the elegant guesthouse room. Susan's kindness in offering this space for her and the girls was touching, but Emma couldn't shake the feeling of being an outsider, like an intruder in a world she didn't belong to. A gentle stirring on the bed caught her attention. Olivia shifted, her little eyes opening slowly. "Mommy?" she murmured, still drowsy. Emma forced a smile, stroking her daughter's hair. "Good morning, my love. How are you feeling?" "Better," Olivia replied, sitting up. Her curious gaze swept the room. "Mommy, when are we going home?" The innocent question hit Emma like a punch in the stomach. Home. The small house at the back of the property that had been her refuge, her hiding place, and for so many years. Was it still her home? Did she still have a place here at Miller Farm? "I don't know, sweetheart," Emma answered honestly. "Things are complicated right now." Before Olivia could ask more questions, a soft knock at the door interrupted them. Emma's heart quickened. "Who would come so early?" "Come in," she called, her voice tinged with a slight tremor. The door opened to reveal Susan Miller, impeccably dressed despite the morning hour. Her tired eyes lit up when she saw Olivia awake. "Good morning," Susan said gently. "I hope I'm not interrupting." Emma shook her head, standing up. "Not at all. Please, come in." Susan entered the room carrying a breakfast tray. The aroma of fresh coffee and newly baked bread filled the air. "I thought you might like some breakfast," she explained, setting the tray on a nearby table. Her gaze fell on Olivia, and she smiled kindly. "Good morning, dear. Are you feeling better?" Olivia nodded shyly, still not entirely comfortable with the newly discovered grandmother. Susan seemed to sense the girl's discomfort and didn't push it, turning her attention to Emma. "Emma, I was hoping we could talk a little. There's so much we need to discuss." Emma felt her stomach tighten. This was it. The moment she'd feared ever since the night of the engagement party. Would Susan ask her to leave, to take the girls and never come back? "Of course, Mrs. Miller," she replied, trying to keep her voice steady. I also think we need to talk." Susan nodded, her expression softening. "Why don't we have breakfast first? The girls need to eat, and I'm sure you do too." While Emma helped Sophia, who had awakened at the smell of food, to sit at the table, she couldn't help noticing the look on Susan's face. There was a mixture of emotions in the matriarch's eyes, sadness, curiosity, and something that looked like hope. Breakfast passed in near silence, broken only by the occasional comments from the twins about the delicious meal. Emma watched with a mix of anxiety and tenderness as Susan interacted with her granddaughters, offering more juice or gently asking about their likes and dislikes. Finally, with the girls occupied by some toys Susan had brought, the two women stepped into the small sitting room adjacent to the bedroom. "Emma," Susan began, her voice gentle yet firm, "I know these past few days have been difficult for all of us, but I want you to know there's no intention of sending you away or separating you from the girls." Emma felt tears she'd been holding back begin to flow. I'm so scared, Mrs. Miller, scared. Scared that I've ruined everything, that I've caused so much pain to all of you." Susan approached, taking Emma's hands in hers. "Oh, my dear, you haven't ruined anything. Yes, the revelation was a shock. And yes, There's a lot of pain and confusion. But you gave us a precious gift, a part of Ryan we thought we'd lost forever. Emma sobbed softly, Susan's words unleashing a flood of pent-up emotions. I miss him so much, she confessed. Every day, when I look at the girls, I see Ryan, his smile, his eyes. Susan's eyes were also full of tears. I miss him too, dear, and that's why I want you to stay. Let's figure this out somehow. The girls are Millers, Emma, their family. As the two women talked, outside the guest house, Ethan was pacing anxiously through the gardens. His mind was a whirlwind of conflicting emotions, anger over the long-kept secret, confusion about how to handle this new reality, and growing curiosity about the nieces he never knew he had. His steps led him to the old oak tree where he and Ryan used to play as kids. How many times had they climbed those branches, imagining themselves as explorers in distant lands or knights on heroic missions? The memory of his brother, so vivid now, brought a sharp pang of pain to his chest. Ryan, you idiot, Ethan murmured, leaning against the trunk. Why didn't you tell me? I could have helped, I could have... His words were lost in the gentle morning breeze. What could he have done, really? Would he have supported his brother against their parents' wishes? Would he have kept the secret if Ryan had confided in him? The sound of childish laughter interrupted his thoughts. Turning, Ethan saw Sophia and Olivia playing in the guest house garden, their small figures full of life and energy. For a moment, he stood frozen, watching them. It was like seeing Ryan again, a reflection of his childhood memories. Without realizing it, Ethan began walking toward the girls. They paused their game upon noticing him, their curious eyes fixed on him. Hello? Ethan said, his voice rougher than he intended. I'm your Uncle Ethan. Do you remember me? Sophia, the bolder of the two, took a step forward. You look like Daddy in the pictures, she said, her childish voice filled with wonder. Ethan felt his heart clench. Yeah, I guess I do, he answered softly. But your daddy and I looked a lot alike. Encouraged by her sister, Olivia came closer as well. Are you going to live with us now? She asked innocently. The question caught Ethan by surprise. I already live here on the farm, he explained, but now I guess you'll be living here too. The girls exchanged excited looks, and Ethan couldn't help but smile. There was something contagious about their innocence and joy. Uncle Ethan, Sophia called, tugging at his sleeve. Do you want to play with us? For a moment, Ethan hesitated. There was so much to figure out, so many unresolved issues. Megan still wasn't returning his calls. His mother was busy rearranging life on the farm, and he himself was still trying to sort out his feelings about this entire situation. But looking at the hopeful faces of his nieces, Ethan felt something shift inside him. Maybe, just maybe, this was the start of something new and wonderful. So you know what, he said, a genuine smile spreading across his face. I'd love to play with you. While Ethan joined his nieces in their game, on the other side of the property, in the main house, Megan watched the scene through a window, her expression cold and calculating. Her carefully laid plans were crumbling before her eyes, and she had no intention of letting it happen without a fight. With one last look at the scene in the garden, Megan turned away from the window, her face set with determination. It was time to take action, to push Ethan to make a choice. After all, she hadn't come this far to see her dreams of a comfortable, secure life destroyed by a secret from the past. The atmosphere at Miller Farm remained tense and uncertain, but beneath the surface, new connections were forming. Old wounds were beginning to heal, and the future, though still hazy, seemed to hold the promise of fresh starts. The weeks that followed at Miller Farm were marked by a mixture of emotions and difficult adjustments. The once well-established farm routine now felt constantly in flux, with each family member trying to find their place in this new reality. Ethan, who had initially kept a cautious distance, started drawing closer to his nieces with growing curiosity. Every visit to the guest house revealed new, startling similarities to Ryan. The way Sophia wrinkled her nose when she laughed, identical to his late brother, or Olivia's thoughtful way of observing the world, so reminiscent of the long philosophical talks he used to have with Ryan. Look, Uncle Ethan, Sophia exclaimed one day, showing him a drawing. I drew our family, Ethan felt a lump in his throat when he saw the stick figures, including a depiction of Ryan hovering like an angel above them all. "It's beautiful, sweetheart," he said, his voice tight with emotion. Susan, meanwhile, split her time between caring for the twins and immersing herself in old memories of Ryan. She spent hours in the attic, rummaging through boxes of photographs and journals, looking for clues that might have revealed her son's secret romance. "How did I not notice?" she whispered to herself, silent tears rolling down her cheeks as she flipped through an old photo album. Each picture of Ryan now seemed to hide something, a smile that concealed more than it revealed. Emma, after a few weeks of adjustment, returned to her work in the farm's kitchen. However, the environment that had once been her refuge now felt strange and even hostile. She sensed curious, sometimes judgmental looks from the other employees, hushed whispers that stopped as soon as she entered a room. "Emma, I need you to prepare dinner tonight," Susan said one day, stepping into the kitchen. "Ethan has invited some friends and Megan will be there." Emma felt her stomach drop. "Of course, Mrs. Miller. I'll do my best." The mention of Megan brought up the growing tension on the farm. Far from accepting the situation, Ethan's fiancée seemed even more hostile. Her barbed comments and icy glares created an increasingly uncomfortable atmosphere. "So, Ethan," Megan said during dinner, her voice sickly sweet, "when do you plan to resume our wedding plans, or should we wait until your surprise nieces are fully settled in?" The silence that followed was deafening. Ethan cast an apologetic look at Emma, who was serving dessert with trembling hands. Adaptation was hard for everyone. Each day brought new challenges and new emotions to be processed. But amid the chaos and uncertainty, small moments of connection began to emerge. There, smiles shared between Ethan and the twins, a comforting hug from Susan to Emma, an unexpected laugh during a family meal. Miller Farm was changing, evolving, and while the path ahead remained uncertain, there was a growing sense that somehow they would find a new balance, a new definition of family. The late afternoon sun cast long shadows over the well-tended gardens of Miller Farm, when Susan Miller, seated in her private office, noticed something unusual. Through the open window, she heard Megan's voice in the garden. The tone was low and urgent, very different from the polished facade Megan usually presented. Intrigued, Susan moved quietly to the window, trying to catch snippets of the conversation. "No, you don't understand. Everything has changed now," Megan hissed into the phone. "I need more time." "No, you can't come here." "I'll handle it. Got it." The call ended abruptly, and Susan saw Megan slip her phone back into her pocket with trembling hands, glancing nervously around before returning to the house. That conversation sparked something in Susan. Over the following days, she paid closer attention to Megan's movements, noticing strange patterns, secret phone calls, sudden departures, and a growing tension that went beyond mere stress from Emma's arrival and the twins. One afternoon, while looking for some documents in the farm's main office, Susan found something that made her heart race. Hidden under a pile of papers was a partially destroyed document. The legible parts mentioned substantial debts and threats of foreclosure. "What is this?" Susan murmured, trying to piece it together. Megan's family name, Prescott, appeared several times, along with alarming figures. In that moment, Susan made a decision. She needed to know more about Megan's past, about her family and her true intentions with Ethan. Discreetly, she began making phone calls, using old and trusted contacts to investigate the history of the Prescotts, Megan's family. At the same time, Susan found herself drawn more and more to Emma. The young cook, once an almost invisible presence on the farm, had become an integral part of their lives, bringing not just the twins, but also a precious connection to Ryan. One evening after dinner, Susan invited Emma for tea in her private office. The twins were already in bed, and the house was quiet. "Emma, dear," Susan began, pouring tea into delicate porcelain cups, "there's something I've been wanting to ask you for weeks." Emma nodded nervously. Despite Susan's kindness, she still felt like an intruder in this elegant world. "What was Ryan like with you? How did it all start between you two?" The question took Emma by surprise. She lowered her gaze to her cup, a sad smile tugging at her lips. "Ryan was light, Mrs. Miller, so full of life, of dreams. Emma paused, lost in memories. It started so simply. I was working late one night, getting ready for an event. Ryan came into the kitchen looking for a snack. We talked for hours, laughing about silly things. After that, he showed up more often. Susan listened intently, her eyes shining with tears unshed. She could see her son in this description, the Ryan so full of life that she knew so well. We fell in love slowly, Emma continued. Secret meetings in the stables, whispered conversations under the stars. Ryan talked about changing the world, about making the farm grow in ways no one imagined, and I just wanted to be by his side, no matter what. Emma's voice faltered, and Susan gently placed a hand over hers. Thank you for sharing this with me, Emma. It means a lot to hear about those moments I missed with my son. The two women spent hours talking, sharing stories and memories of Ryan. For Susan, it was like rediscovering her son through Emma's eyes. For Emma, it was the chance to finally speak openly about the love she had kept secret for so long. Meanwhile, Ethan found himself increasingly torn. He watched his mother grow closer to Emma, with a mixture of relief and apprehension. On one hand, he was glad to see his mother finding comfort in Ryan's memories. On the other, he couldn't ignore Megan's growing resentment. Ethan, we need to talk, Megan said one evening, her voice tense. We can't keep ignoring the elephant in the room. When are we going to resume our wedding plans? Ethan sighed, running a hand through his hair in frustration. Megan, you know things are complicated right now. We need time to adjust to all this. Time, Megan repeated, her voice rising. How much longer, Ethan? Until your surprise nieces go off to college. The argument that followed was heated, with Megan accusing Ethan of neglecting their relationship in favor of his new family. Ethan, for his part, felt increasingly distant from Megan, disturbed by her lack of empathy for the situation. In the days that followed, the tension at the farm reached a breaking point. Megan, frustrated and increasingly hostile, began to stir up incidents. Snide remarks about Emma in front of the staff, accidents resulting in the twins' toys getting broken, heated arguments with Ethan echoing through the house. It was after one of these particularly unpleasant incidents that Susan made a decision. She found Emma in the kitchen, trying to comfort Sophia, who was crying after Megan had accidentally knocked over and broken her favorite doll. Emma, Susan said softly, I think it's time for you and the girls to move into the main house. Emma looked at Susan, surprised. But Mrs. Miller, I don't want to cause more problems. We're already so grateful for the guest house. Susan shook her head, resolute. This isn't a request, dear. It's time for the three of you to be where you belong, with the family. Ryan would want that. The news of Emma and the twins moving into the main house hit like a bombshell. Megan was furious, her face red with anger as she yelled at Ethan in their shared bedroom. This is ridiculous, she raged. First, you let them stay on the farm. Now they're moving into the house. What's next, Ethan? Are you going to ask me to leave so your precious cook can take my place? Ethan, exhausted and conflicted, tried to calm Megan. It's not like that, Megan. They're family. The girls are Ryan's daughters, my brother's children. I can't just ignore them. And me, Megan retorted, tears of frustration in her eyes. I'm your fiancé, Ethan, or at least I was before all this craziness started. The move itself was tense, with Megan going out of her way to show her displeasure at every opportunity. Emma, for her part, was nervous and reluctant. She knew this was best for her daughters, but couldn't help feeling out of place in the house's elegant rooms. On moving day, as Emma organized the girls' few belongings in what had been Ryan's old room, she was flooded by memories. Every corner seemed to contain a piece of him, from the shelves full of books to the old guitar in the corner. Mommy, look, Olivia exclaimed, pointing to a photo on the nightstand. In it, a young Ryan beamed, his eyes shining with the same light Emma saw every day in her daughters. It's Daddy, Sophia said softly, touching the photo reverently. Emma felt tears prick her eyes. Yes, my loves, that's your daddy. At that moment, Susan appeared in the doorway, observing the scene with a mixture of sadness and joy. You know, she said, entering the room, Ryan loved this room. He used to say it was his refuge from the world. The twins looked at their grandmother curiously, always eager for stories about the father they never knew. Susan sat on the bed, pulling her granddaughters close. He used to sit by that window, she pointed, and play the guitar for hours. Sometimes I'd hear him singing softly, composing songs about adventures and love. Emma smiled through her tears. He sang one of those songs to me once. It was about a girl he met, who had eyes like stars and a smile that could light up the world. Susan looked at Emma in surprise, then smiled knowingly. That song. I heard it so many times. I never imagined it was about you, dear. The weeks that followed were a period of adjustment for everyone. The twins, with the typical resilience of children, quickly fell in love with the big house, discovering new corners to play in and charming everyone with their energy and curiosity. Ethan, in particular, found himself increasingly involved with his nieces. He took them horseback riding, taught them how to fish in the farm's creek, and to his own surprise caught himself telling them stories about Ryan. "Did you know your dad once tried to build a treehouse by himself?" Ethan said to them one afternoon while walking through the orchards. He spent weeks planning it, drew up elaborate designs and everything, but when he finally started building, the first board he nailed fell right on his head. The girls giggled, delighted by the story. "Was Daddy clumsy like Mommy?" Sophia asked, making Ethan grin. "Sometimes," he replied, ruffling his niece's hair affectionately, "but he never gave up. That was one of the best things about Ryan. He always chased his dreams, no matter how impossible they seemed." As Ethan grew closer to his nieces and Emma, his relationship with Megan deteriorated. Arguments became more frequent and bitter, with Megan constantly accusing Ethan of neglecting her for his new family. Susan, meanwhile, continued her discreet investigation into Megan's past. Every new discovery made her more worried. The once prosperous Prescott family was on the verge of bankruptcy. Enormous debts, failed businesses, and even some fraud allegations painted an alarming picture. One night, while everyone was having dinner together, a scene that had become common, despite the palpable tension whenever Megan was around, Susan watched her future daughter-in-law with critical eyes. Megan seemed nervous, checking her phone repeatedly and barely touching her food. "Is everything all right, dear?" Susan asked, her tone sweet yet concealing her suspicions. Megan jumped, almost knocking over her glass. "Yes, Mrs. Miller, just a headache." Ethan gave his fiancée a concerned look, but before he could say anything, Olivia interrupted. "Uncle Ethan, can you take us horseback riding tomorrow?" the girl asked, her eyes shining with anticipation. Ethan smiled, his attention immediately captured by his nieces. "Of course, Princess. How about right after breakfast?" Megan's face twisted in a look of disgust that she quickly tried to hide. But Susan noticed, as did Emma, who caught the look of pain crossing her own face. After dinner, while Emma was tucking the girls in, Susan found Ethan alone on the porch. "Son," she began softly, "we need to talk about Megan." Ethan let out a long sigh, running a hand over his tired face. "I know, Mom. Things are complicated." Susan hesitated, weighing her words carefully. "Ethan, do you know much about Megan's family? Their background, their business dealings?" Ethan frowned, puzzled. "Well, I know the basics. Why?" "I've noticed some strange things, wee son. Suspicious conversations, hidden documents." Susan paused, choosing her next words carefully. "I think there's more to Megan's story than she's told us." Ethan was silent for a long moment, processing his mother's words. Part of him wanted to defend Megan, to deny any suggestion that she might be hiding something. But another part, a part that had been growing over the past few weeks, couldn't ignore the changes he'd seen in his fiancée. "What do you suggest, Mom?" he finally asked, his voice low and tired. Susan placed a comforting hand on his shoulder. "For now, just keep your eyes open. And maybe it's time you had a serious conversation with Megan about your future together." As mother and son talked on the porch, upstairs Emma finished reading a bedtime story to the twins. She watched their sleepy faces, so much like Ryan's, feeling a wave of love and protectiveness. "Mommy," Sophia murmured, already half asleep, "I'm glad we live here now." Emma smiled, gently kissing her daughter's forehead. "Me too. My love, me too." That night, while Miller Farm grew quiet, each of its inhabitants was lost in thought. Susan, determined to protect her family and uncover Megan's secrets. Ethan, torn between the love he once felt for his fiancée and his growing bond with his nieces and Emma. Emma, grateful for the chance to give her daughters the family Ryan always wanted for them, yet still fearful of an uncertain future. And Megan, staring at the ceiling as she plotted her next move, knowing time was running out. The silence of the night was broken by the soft sound of footsteps in the hallway. Susan, unable to sleep, decided to make one last round of the house. Passing by Ryan's old room, now occupied by Emma and the twins, she paused, listening to the gentle breathing of the girls. A sad smile tugged at her lips as she reflected on how unpredictable life could be. Just a few weeks earlier, she believed she had lost her last connection to Ryan. Now, she had two adorable granddaughters who were her son's mirror. Continuing on her way, Susan passed the office and noticed a faint light coming from inside. Intrigued, she approached silently. Through the slightly open door, she saw Megan leaning over the desk, speaking urgently on the phone. "No, you don't understand," Megan hissed, her voice a tense whisper. "I need more time. Things here are complicated, but I promise I'll get the money. I just need you to hold out a little longer." Susan quietly backed away, her heart pounding. That conversation confirmed her worst suspicions. Megan was hiding something big enough to threaten not just her relationship with Ethan, but possibly the entire Miller family. As she returned to her room, Susan made up her mind. Tomorrow, she would confront Megan. It was time to lay all the cards on the table and protect her family, no matter the cost. The next morning, Miller Farm awoke with a sense of anticipation in the air. No one knew exactly what, but everyone sensed that something important was about to happen, something that would forever alter the course of their lives. And so, with the rising sun, a new chapter in the Miller family's story was about to begin. A chapter filled with revelations, confrontations, and perhaps a new beginning for them all. The attic of the Miller Farm main house was a place rarely visited, full of dusty memories and forgotten secrets. On that autumn afternoon, Susan Miller climbed the creaking stairs, determined to sort through some old things to make room for Emma and the twins' belongings. The air was heavy and warm, laden with the smell of old wood and aging paper. As she sifted through boxes piled up over the years, Susan came across one she didn't immediately recognize. It was a simple shoebox worn by time, with Ryan scrawled on the side in her son's careless handwriting. Heart-pounding, she opened it, revealing a trove of memories she hadn't known existed. Inside were a stack of handwritten letters, some loose photographs, and a small leather-bound notebook. Susan picked up the first letter with trembling hands, instantly recognizing Ryan's handwriting. "My dearest Emma," the letter began, and Susan felt a knot form in her throat. She read on, her son's words revealing a deep, passionate love she never knew existed. As Susan read letter after letter, a secret love story unfolded before her eyes. Ryan wrote of clandestine meetings in the stables, shared dreams under the stars, and a future they planned together, away from the expectations and pressures of the Miller family. "My love," said one letter dated just a few weeks before Ryan's fatal accident, "I can't wait for us to start our new life together. You, me, and our baby, our own little family. I promise I'll do everything I can to be the best father our child could ever have." Susan gasped, tears streaming down her face. Ryan knew about the baby. He was planning a life with Emma and the child on the way. How could she not have noticed? Digging deeper into the box, Susan found detailed plans written by Ryan. Sketches for a small house in a far-off town, lists of baby names, and even a basic financial plan for supporting his new family. Clearly, Ryan had thought it all through, determined to make his new life work away from the farm and his family's expectations. At the bottom of the box, Susan found a photograph that made her heart stop. It was an image of Ryan and Emma, clearly taken without their knowledge. They were sitting by the farm's lake, Ryan's arms around Emma, both laughing at something out of frame. The happiness and love on their faces were palpable, and Susan wondered how she could have been so blind. With her head spinning and her heart heavy, Susan gathered all the box's contents and made her way downstairs. She needed to speak to Emma. She needed the full truth. She found Emma in the kitchen, preparing dinner while the twins played outside under Ethan's watchful eye. The domestic scene, so familiar these past weeks, now felt charged with new meaning for Susan. "Emma, dear," Susan called softly, her voice betraying her emotions. "May we talk?" Emma turned, immediately noticing Susan's troubled expression and the box in her hands. Her face paled slightly, but she nodded, drying her hands on her apron. "Of course, Mrs. Miller. Let me just ask Javier to watch dinner." Minutes later, the two women were seated in Susan's private office, Ryan's box between them on the coffee table. Emma looked at the box with a mix of recognition and apprehension. "I found this in the attic," Susan began, her voice gentle. "Emma, why didn't you tell me everything? About Ryan's plans, about how he knew about the baby, the twins." Emma closed her eyes for a moment, taking a deep breath. When she opened them, tears glistened. "I'm sorry, Mrs. Miller. I didn't know how to say it all at once. It was already so hard to reveal the existence of the twins. I was afraid that if I told you about Ryan's plans, about how he wanted to leave the farm, I was afraid you'd hate me even more." Susan reached out, taking Emma's hands in her own. "Oh, my dear, we could never hate you. You gave us something precious, a part of Ryan we thought lost forever." Encouraged by Susan's kindness, Emma began to talk. She told of Ryan's grand hopes for the future, how he wanted to prove himself beyond the shadow of the Miller family name. "Ryan loved this farm, Mrs. Miller, but he felt like he was living the life others had planned for him. He wanted to do something on his own, to prove he could succeed without the Miller name behind him." Susan nodded, remembering the many times Ryan had expressed frustration with the expectations placed on him. How had she not realized how deep those feelings ran? Emma continued, her voice growing stronger as she shared long-buried memories. "Ryan had big plans for us. He wanted to open a small restaurant in a coastal town. Said I'd be the head chef, and he'd handle the business. We dreamed of raising our daughters away from the pressures and expectations he felt here. But he never wanted to hurt you," Emma quickly added, seeing the pain in Susan's eyes. "Ryan loved you all so much. He just wanted the chance to be his own person, to forge his own path." Susan sat in silence for a long moment, absorbing all Emma had said. Finally, she spoke, her voice trembling with emotion. "Thank you for telling me this, Emma. I think we need to share this with Ethan. He deserves to know about his brother's plans." Emma nodded, nervous but determined. "Yes, I think it's time all truths come out." That night, after dinner, the Miller family gathered in the living room. Ethan, sensing the tension in the air, glanced anxiously between his mother and Emma. Megan, noticing something big was about to happen, sat stiffly beside Ethan, her face a mask of feigned indifference. Susan began, her voice gentle yet firm. "Ethan, Emma has something important to share with us, something about Ryan and the plans he had for the future." In the minutes that followed, Emma, with occasional support from Susan, revealed everything. She spoke of Ryan's dreams of independence, his plans for the restaurant, and how he wanted to raise a family away from Miller Farm. Ethan listened in silence, his face a mixture of shock, pain, and, surprisingly, understanding. When Emma finished, he stayed quiet for a long moment before speaking. I always felt Ryan was restless," he finally said, his voice rough with emotion. "But I never imagined it went that far, that he wanted to leave everything behind." "He didn't want to hurt anyone, Ethan," Emma said softly. "Ryan loved all of you. He just wanted a chance to prove himself on his own." Ethan nodded slowly, processing all he'd heard. "I get that. More than you can imagine." He paused, looking at Emma with new understanding. "Thank you for telling us this, Emma, for sharing this part of Ryan with us." Megan, who had stayed silent during the entire revelation, suddenly stood up. "This is ridiculous," she exclaimed, her face red with anger. Are you really going to believe this fairy tale? She probably made all of it up just to get closer to the family. Megan, Ethan reprimanded her, shocked by his fiancée's outburst. But Megan wouldn't back down. No, Ethan, don't you see what's happening? Ever since she showed up with these children, our lives have been turned upside down. And now this, convenient stories about how Ryan wanted to abandon everything. She's obviously manipulating all of you. The silence that followed was deafening. Emma, pale and trembling, stared at Megan in shock and hurt. Susan rose, her posture rigid with indignation. That's enough, Megan, she said, her voice cutting like steel. You have no right to speak like that in my house, let alone in front of the children. Ethan, seeming to wake from a trance, stood as well. Megan, I think you should go to your room. We need to talk, but not right now. Not like this. Megan glanced around, seeing only shocked and disapproving faces. With one last furious look at Emma, she stormed out of the living room, slamming the door behind her. The silence that followed was heavy, charged with unspoken emotions and newly revealed truths. Emma finally broke it, her voice shaky but resolute. I'm sorry, she said softly. I never wanted to cause trouble or create a rift in the family. Maybe it's best if I leave. No. The answer came in unison from Ethan and Susan. Ethan moved closer to Emma, placing a gentle hand on her shoulder. Emma, you and the girls are family. What happened tonight wasn't your fault. In fact, if it weren't for you, who knows how long Megan would have continued her deception. Susan joined them, placing a comforting hand on Emma's other shoulder. Ethan's right, dear. You gave us a precious gift, the chance to know a part of Ryan we never knew. To understand his dreams and desires. Tears slipped down Emma's cheeks. Thank you, she whispered. Ryan, he loved you all so much. He just wanted a chance to be himself. Ethan smiled sadly. I understand that more than you could imagine. He paused, seeming to wrestle with something internally. Actually, there's something I need to share as well. Susan and Emma looked at him curiously. Ethan took a deep breath before continuing. So I've also been thinking about leaving the farm, he admitted. Not permanently, but I want to travel, see the world, maybe work on other farms to learn new techniques. I love this place, but sometimes I feel like I'm living in the shadow of everyone's expectations. Susan let out a soft gasp, though she didn't seem entirely surprised. Oh, Ethan, she said gently. Why didn't you say anything before? Ethan shrugged, looking almost ashamed. I didn't want to disappoint anyone, and after Ryan was gone, it felt like I had to stay, that it was my responsibility. But it isn't, Emma said kindly. Ryan always told me you had an adventurous spirit. He admired that in you. Ethan smiled, touched by Emma's words. Thank you for telling me that. It means a lot. Susan looked at her son, her eyes filled with understanding and love. Ethan, if this is what you really want, you should do it. The farm will be here when you come back, and who knows, maybe your experiences will bring new ideas and improvements to our business. Ethan looked relieved, as though a huge weight had been lifted from him. Thank you, Mom. I promise I'll think carefully before making any final decision. The rest of the evening was spent in lighter conversation, with Emma sharing more stories about Ryan and his dreams for the future. The atmosphere, though still charged with emotion, felt lighter, like a breath of fresh air sweeping through the Miller home. When they finally retired for the night, each carried new perspectives and understandings. Susan, a renewed appreciation for the son she thought she knew so well. Ethan, the freedom to pursue his own dreams without guilt. And Emma, a growing sense of acceptance and belonging within the Miller family. Upstairs, alone in the bedroom she shared with Ethan, Megan seethed with anger and frustration. Her carefully laid plans were unraveling before her eyes. With trembling hands, she picked up her phone, dialing a familiar number. Dad, she whispered as soon as the call connected. Things are getting worse here. We need a new plan, and fast. As Miller Farm finally fell quiet for the night, the air was thick with promises of changes to come. Revelations had been made, truths exposed, and bonds strengthened. But in the shadows, new threats were brewing, ready to challenge the family's newly found harmony. The future of Miller Farm and all its inhabitants was about to take an unexpected turn, guided by the revelations of the past and the aspirations of the present. And at the heart of it all, Ryan's legacy continued to shape the lives of those he left behind in ways no one could have predicted. The afternoon sun cast a soft glow over Miller Farm as the family gathered for dinner. The large oak table in the dining room was set with the finest china, a gesture from Susan in hopes of bringing a sense of normalcy to what they all knew would be a tense meal. Emma, still feeling like an outsider despite the months that had passed, helped Susan with the final touches. Her hands trembled slightly as she arranged the silverware, conscious of Megan's furtive glances from the doorway. "Don't let her bother you, dear," Susan murmured, giving Emma's shoulder a reassuring squeeze. "This is your home now, as much as it is hers." Emma nodded, grateful for the support, but unable to fully shake the discomfort Megan's presence always brought. Gradually, everyone settled around the table. Ethan took the head seat, a position that still felt strange to him, a constant reminder of Ryan's absence. Megan sat stiffly to his right, her face a mask of false composure. Across from her, Emma helped the twins settle in, Sophia and Olivia casting curious and slightly nervous looks at the adults around them. The silence was almost palpable, broken only by the clink of utensils and the occasional request for someone to pass a dish. Susan tried to maintain light conversation, commenting on the weather or the latest farm happenings, but her words seemed to fall flat. It was Sophia, with the characteristic innocence of a 4-year-old, who inadvertently lit the fuse everyone had been trying to ignore. "Mummy," she said clearly, slicing through the silence, "why does Aunt Megan look angry all the time?" The sound of a fork dropping onto a plate echoed in the hush. All eyes turned to Megan, whose face had gone visibly pale. "Sophia," Emma began quietly, her voice tight, "that's not polite." But Megan cut her off, her voice laced with barely contained rage. "No, Emma, let her speak. After all, you've taught your daughters to be so observant, haven't you? To notice things that are none of their business." "Megan," Ethan warned, his voice filled with reproach. But it was as if a dam had finally burst. Months of frustration, anger, and resentment overflowed, and Megan was no longer willing or able to hold back. "No, Ethan," she said, standing abruptly. "Enough with the pretense that everything is fine, that this situation is normal." She turned on Emma, her eyes blazing with fury. "You," she spat, "you ruined everything. You appear out of nowhere with these children, spin a convenient story about Ryan, and suddenly you're treated like family, and nobody questions anything." Emma turned pale, instinctively pulling the twins closer to her. "Megan, please, the girls—" "Oh, shut up," Megan yelled. "You're nothing but a con artist, using these children to manipulate everyone. My plans, my future, completely ruined because of you and these brats." The sound of chairs scraping back rang through the room. Ethan got to his feet, his voice booming. "That's enough, Megan. You're out of control." Susan, who had been in shock, finally found her voice. "How dare you speak like that in my house?" In front of the children, the ensuing chaos was interrupted by the piercing ring of Susan's phone. With trembling hands, she answered, murmuring an apology. "Hello? Yes, this is she." "What? Are you sure?" Susan's face went visibly pale as she listened. "I see. Thank you for letting me know." When Susan hung up, her gaze locked onto Megan, a mixture of shock and disappointment in her eyes. "That was my contact at the bank," Susan said slowly. "He informed me of the Prescott family's financial situation. Apparently, they're on the brink of bankruptcy. Unpaid mortgages, huge debts, failed businesses. And it seems this marriage to Ethan was viewed as the last chance for financial salvation." The silence that followed was deafening. Ethan stared at Megan, horror and betrayal clear on his face. "Is that true?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "This whole time it was just for money." Megan, seeing no more room for denial, let out a bitter laugh. "What did you expect, Ethan? That I would actually fall in love with some farm boy, heir to a business in the middle of nowhere? This was business, pure and simple." Her words hit Ethan like a punch to the gut. He stumbled back, leaning on the table for support. I was going to marry you, share my life, my family. Your family, Megan sneered. You mean this mess? A dead brother, a cook-turned-heir, and 2 bastard children. Oh, please. That was the last straw. Susan rose, her voice cold as steel. Get out of my house, now. Megan looked around, seeing only shocked or disgusted faces. With a final look of contempt, she tore the engagement ring from her finger and flung it toward Ethan. Keep your stupid ring and your pathetic farm. I don't need any of you. With that, she stormed out of the room, her heels echoing through the house as she went upstairs. The silence that remained was heavy, broken only by the muffled sobs of the twins, whom Emma tried to comfort. Ethan stood frozen, staring at the ring on the floor. Susan was the first to move, going to her son and wrapping him in a tight hug. "Oh, my dear," she murmured. "I'm so sorry. So very sorry." Ethan finally seemed to snap out of his stupor, hugging his mother back with equal force. When he pulled away, his eyes shone with tears, but there was a firm resolve in his gaze. "No, Mom," he said softly. "You have nothing to apologize for. In fact, I should be thanking you. You saved us from a terrible mistake." He then turned to Emma, who still clutched the twins protectively. "Emma, I'm sorry you and the girls had to witness that. Megan had no right to say those horrible things." Emma shook her head, a sad smile on her lips. "Don't worry about me, Ethan. I'm more worried about you. How are you feeling?" The simple question, asked so genuinely, took Ethan by surprise. He blinked rapidly, trying to hold back the tears that threatened to fall. I'm not sure," he admitted. "Betrayed, angry, hurt, but also, strangely, relieved. It's like a weight has been lifted off my shoulders, a weight I didn't know I was carrying." The hours that followed passed in a blur. Megan left without another word, leaving behind only the echo of bitter accusations and shattered dreams. The Miller family, along with Emma and the twins, gathered in the living room, a silent unit against the storm that had just passed. Emma, sitting on the sofa with the sleeping twins in her lap, couldn't help feeling a growing sense of guilt. Despite Megan's cruel words, she couldn't help wondering if her presence, and that of the girls, had somehow triggered this entire situation. "Maybe," she began hesitantly, breaking the silence that had fallen, "maybe it would be better if the girls and I left for a while, gave you all space to recover and—" "No!" The response came in unison from both Ethan and Susan, startling Emma. Ethan rose from his armchair, moving closer to the sofa where Emma sat. He knelt in front of her, his eyes meeting hers with an intensity that took her breath away. "Emma," he said gently, "you and the girls are family. What happened today wasn't your fault. In fact, if it weren't for you, who knows how much longer Megan would have carried on her scheme." Susan joined them, sitting beside Emma and placing a comforting hand on her shoulder. "Ethan's right, dear. This farm is your home now. The girls belong here where they can be connected to Ryan's memory. And you, well, you've brought light back into our lives in a way we never thought possible after losing Ryan." Emma felt tears sting her eyes, overwhelmed by their kindness. I don't know what to say. You've been so good to us even after everything." "Because we're family," Ethan said firmly. "And family sticks together, no matter what." The following days were a time of adjustment and healing for everyone. Ethan, though still hurt by Megan's betrayal, seemed lighter, as though a weight had indeed been lifted. He spent more and more time with the twins, taking them on walks around the farm and telling them stories about Ryan. Susan, for her part, threw herself into reorganizing the family business, ensuring Megan's attempt to exploit them hadn't caused lasting damage. But she always made time for quiet moments with Emma and the twins, slowly building the grandmotherly bond she never expected to have. For Emma, each day brought a deeper sense of belonging. She continued her work in the farm's kitchen, but now with a newfound status in the family. The other employees, who once treated her with curiosity and sometimes suspicion, now saw her as an integral part of the Miller household. As the weeks turned into months, Miller Farm found a new rhythm. Emotional wounds, though still fresh, began to heal. And at the center of it all, Emma and the twins thrived, finally finding the home and family Ryan had always wanted for them. The summer sun bathed Miller Farm in a golden light, while colorful balloons and ribbons danced in the gentle breeze. The huge oak tree in the center of the yard, a silent witness to generations of the Miller family, now provided shade for a lively party. It was Sophia and Olivia's 5th birthday, and the entire farm seemed to hum with joy. Emma stood on the porch of the main house, watching the scene with a peaceful smile. A year had passed since the revelations that shook the Miller family, and the change was remarkable. What had once been a place of secrets and sorrow now overflowed with laughter and love. "Mommy! Mommy!" The excited voices of Sophia and Olivia caught her attention. The twins ran toward her, their party dresses billowing behind them. "Come see the cake Grandma made," Emma laughed, allowing herself to be pulled toward the picnic table where an impressive cake awaited. Susan stood there, beaming with pride beside her creation. "Oh, Susan," Emma exclaimed, "it's simply wonderful." The cake, shaped like a farm, was a miniature replica of Miller Farm, complete with tiny sugar animals and even a fondant tractor. "Well," Susan smiled, "I had an excellent teacher." She winked at Emma, referring to the baking lessons they'd shared in recent months. Ethan joined them, carrying a tray of fresh lemonade. "Wow, Mum," he whistled, admiring the cake. "You've really outdone yourself this time." Laughter and animated chatter filled the air. Farm employees, neighbors, and friends had gathered to celebrate not only the twins' birthday, but also the Miller family's rebirth. Emma watched affectionately as Ethan directed the children in games. Her heart warmed, seeing how he'd embraced his role as an uncle with so much enthusiasm and love. Over the past year, Ethan had become not only a father figure to the twins, but had also taken over management of the farm with renewed passion, implementing many of the ideas Ryan once dreamed of. "He's doing an amazing job, isn't he?" Susan's gentle voice drew Emma back to the moment. Emma nodded, moved. "Ryan would be so proud." "Yes, he would," Susan agreed, tears gleaming in her eyes. "But not just of Ethan. He'd be proud of you too, Emma. The way you've raised these girls, how you've integrated yourself into life on the farm, it's everything he could have hoped for." The two women fell silent for a moment, watching the party. Emma couldn't help reflecting on how much her life had changed in just a year. From a lonely cook hiding a painful secret, she had become an integral part of the Miller family. Her work in the kitchen was now a shared passion, no longer a lonely refuge. The afternoon flew by in a whirl of games, laughter, and countless happy birthdays. When the time came to sing Happy Birthday, Emma found herself surrounded by family, not just Sophia and Olivia, but also Ethan, Susan, and everyone else who had become so dear to her. As the candles were blown out and the wishes made, Emma felt a wave of gratitude wash over her. This was the home Ryan had always wanted for them, the family he had dreamed they would have. As the sun began to set, painting the sky in shades of pink and orange, the party wound down. The children, tired but happy, gathered under the old oak tree to listen to Ethan's stories. Emma stood back a bit, wanting to capture this moment in her memory forever. There, beneath the ancient tree, were her daughters, laughing and cuddling with the uncle who adored them. Susan sat nearby, her serene face reflecting the peace she had finally found. And Ethan, he looked up at that moment, his eyes meeting Emma's, a gentle smile on his lips. In that instant, Emma knew with absolute certainty they had made it. Ryan's dream of a united, loving family at Miller Farm had come true in a way no one could have foreseen. Once overshadowed by secrets and sadness, Miller Farm was now truly a home, a place of laughter, love, and the promise of a bright future. And as Emma walked over to join her family under the oak tree, she knew that whatever the future held, they would face it together, bound by love, strengthened by trials, and forever grateful for the second chance life had given them. Miller Farm, once the stage for secrets and sorrows, was now truly a home, a place of laughter, love, and the promise of a bright future. And as Emma walked over to join her family beneath the oak tree, she knew that, no matter what the future held, they would face it together, united by love, strengthened by their trials, and forever grateful for the second chance life had given them.